Hello, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We are done with the types of graphic design. Now we are looking at how does graphic design work. So I hope you are ready for this session. All right, so how does design work? So designers are the link between the client and the audience, no doubt. All right, but on the other hand, a client is often too close to the message to understand various ways in which it can be presented. So graphic designers learn how to construct a message and how to present it successfully. All right, so they work with the client to understand the content and the purpose of the message. They often collaborate with market researchers and other specialists to understand the nature of the audience. All right, so we are simply saying that before you actually carry out your design, you need to know the audience which you are facing. All right, to know what to actually give them. So once a design concept is chosen, the designers work with the illustrators and photographers, as well as with type setters and printers or other production specialists to create a final design product. All right, so this is just a scenario that tries to explain how this actually works. All right, we have the client that has a product or message to sell. All right, then you as a designer, you have the skills to edit, organize, arrange giving information into a creative and visually pleasing solution. All right, now the next step is what? Brainstorm. Experiment with different images, typefaces, illustration. That you are brainstorming on the various elements and how to use principles to combine them together. Now, market research. How to reach the intended audience. What do they respond to? How can we attract their attention? And during that research as well, you need to equally carry out research on those similar ideas to what you are actually designing. Now, once you've gone to the market, you've done your research very well, you now go back to brainstorming on the research you've gotten, and then you need to now implement your skills to actually carry out the design, and then now you target what? Your audience. All right, and see if your audience actually get that information, your audience actually buy that information. That is the reason why when you carry out your design, you need to actually send out a sample. You send out samples in your social media platforms and say, okay, these are designs. Which one do you think is preferable, and what do you think can be added to this? You send it to your client. Your client goes through and see if it's beautiful. If your client loves it, then your client is going to appreciate and actually accept what you have done. All right. So the design process. All right. So a good graphic design process is structured around ensuring the client gets the highest quality solution and service appropriate to their business, market, or communication problem. All right, so there are 4 major steps involved in graphic design process, which we are going to look at. We have briefing, we have design, we have artwork, and we have what we call production. All right, so let's get into that and look at what it actually means. The first is briefing. All right, so the design process, briefing. The briefing stage is usually the initial conversation or consultation between the client and the designer. It usually covers the following areas of concern. So what we are trying to say here is that the briefing aspect, when you're talking, a client should not tell you, I need a logo, and boom, you just go and start designing. No, you are not a good graphic designer. You need to get information briefing from what you ask your client, what do you need? Can you give me a briefing of what you actually need? What do you want me to do for you? All right. How do you want the logo to look like? Now you're getting the ideas of the client. Once you get those ideas, the basic overview, all right, the project objective, the intended audience, expected outcome, all right, expected outcome, how the client wants the logo to look like. We have timing, you need to know deadline, when are you expecting me to finally submit this project to you, the budget and the costs, all right. So this project, how much are you going to allocate for this particular project? The designer's quote. All right. When we talk about designer's quote here, we are simply saying that before you carry out a project for a client, what you need to do is you need to give your client a quote, or the client should give you a quote. A quote simply means what kind of design do you want as a client? How much do you think you're going to pay for the design, and what is the time range that you need this design? All right. How long do you think you can give me to actually carry out this design? That is what we call a quote. You can as well give quotes to your clients. Say, okay, this is what we do. We are going to design this flyer for this. All right. And if you want this design between 2 days, you're going to pay this amount, and we are going to give you maybe 2 samples. If you need it designed in, say, 3 to 4 days, we are going to give you this amount and this sample. And maybe in a week's time, you're going to have this amount and this sample. Obviously, the amount reduces as the time increases, the time of delivery increases. All right. So, technical overview, we have looked at the basic overview. Now, technical overview is the size specs, all right, corporate identity and guidelines, and what the production files. Now, this now has to deal with the designer and the designer alone. All right. Now, let's get to the next, the design. We are done with the briefing. Now let's get to the design. The design stage is the most time-consuming area and requires a lot of trial and errors, as well as a lot of back and forth communication between designer and client. It is usually carried out in the following stages. So we are simply saying that this is one of the most important and crucial aspects of the design process. All right. Before you finally conclude with a design, you need to go back and forth with the client. You send the information to the client, he goes through, comes back to you, and then try as much as possible to give you some adjustments, tell you what he or she actually wants. But as a designer, you don't actually need to listen to your clients all the time, or everything the client gives you. You don't need to take it all at you don't need to take it 100%, because sometimes what the client may give you does not suit that particular purpose. Right. So let's look at the first stage. The first stage is the development stage. All right. So a designer reviews the brief and develops. So designer reviews the brief and develops several concepts and preliminary designs. Then select the most appropriate option for further development. So at this stage, when you're carrying out your design, the first thing you need to do, don't just go to your software and start pumping shapes and lines here and there. What you need to do is you should have a notebook that is meant for creativity. All right. When you go online, you try to design something, you draw it, you try to bring out that image and see how far you can go with that. All right. The second is presentation. So designer presents visual solution and explains design decisions to clients. All right. So client offers feedback and may request changes. You are presenting that information, that the design you've done to your clients. Then the third is what we call the refinement. Refinement, doing finer touches. All right. You are doing your finer touches. The designer makes the changes requested and fine-tunes the material as requested. All right. Then the third is the artwork. The designer prepares the artwork file and provides a proof of what the final project will look like. All right. So this is usually done via email or hard copy, printed or printed on paper. All right. So the client then either approves the artwork by signing off on the proof, or marks up changes they would like to make. So if changes are requested, the designer will provide a second proof. So we are simply saying that in graphic design, once you are done with the project, you need to submit a sample to that client. Submit a sample does not mean you send the final product. All right. You can make something like a mock-up, or you can make something like a 3D. You send to the client. The client loves what he or she sees. Then you can now send the printable version of that work. So what is a proof? So a proof is a term used by printing companies that means they printed a trial version of your artwork so you can look at it and confirm it is the way you want it to be. Now, when we are carrying out design, sometimes it doesn't only end at the final touches of carrying out that design. You need to print it out to see if the quality is great. You need to see if the resolution is a perfect resolution requested. Because sometimes if you're designing, let's say, a banner, all right, if you don't put the appropriate resolution, once it is printed, the quality will not be good. All right. It may be good on paper, but not good physically when it's printed. So some printing company use the term PDF proof, which is a proof seen in PDF format. So that's what we are going to be doing throughout our session. So PDF stands for Portable Document Format, and when viewed, shows the document exactly how it will appear if it were printed. All right, so that's just what we're talking about proof. All right, so the fourth is the production process. Once the artwork has passed final approval from the client, it is said to be ready to go to production, especially when it comes to things like flyers, when it comes to business cards, all right? When it comes to, I think logos are mostly equally printed as well, all right? So the designer adds crop, mark, and make sure the Pantone color used in the documents are accurate. Some designs may require Pantone callouts to donate each color that is used. All right, so the designer will turn all fonts into outlines and save the file in multiple formats. That's AI, PDF, JPG. We have several formats of saving our work. Then burn them to a disk if the client has requested this. That's an option. All right, so the designer may also be responsible for forwarding the production file to a commercial printer or factory. In some cases, the designer will request a proof from the printer and passes the proof on to the client for approval. So I think we already talked about that. And this is what we call graphic design. We've actually brainstormed on the definition, we actually brainstormed on the types, and we actually brainstormed on the process. Now we are getting to the next stage of our graphic design session, which is the elements and the principles of graphic design.